City of Stevens Point Board of Water and Sewerage Commissioners meeting, recorded July 10, 2023.
We have 4 people here. The first item of business after the roll call is approval of the minutes of May, since we did not meet in June. Any corrections or additions?
I have none.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Same sign, motion carried. All right, so Joe emailed us and reminded us we have 2 sets of claims in this meeting's group. One, of course, for June and the other one for May. So, Water Department, let's look at both of them for June and July. May and June. Any questions?
On 57,832, is that 1 meter or meters that are held?
No, that's a large quantity of meters. It's probably that one of the lines in there was for a 4-inch meter. But there would be a lot of residential meters in there as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Are they smaller meters?
5/8 and 3/4 probably.
Okay.
Yep.
And so then those get in stock or in just a year's supply, or is that?
I'm trying to think. It could nearly be, because we just switched to a 20-year changeout frequency. Our meters always test out really well, and really all you need to do, Jaime, really all you need to do is indicate it on your PSC report which frequency you're changing your meters in. So since we still have a lot of frequency out at 20 years, we just went from 20. That should be
For the rest of our time on the board.
well for that puts us at 400 to 500 a year that we got to change, but not all those need replacing. But where we are with inventory, a good percentage of them do.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I didn't want to jump ahead too far, but it's still water. I see different suppliers on the next months.
Yep.
Is there a standard?
So if you recall, we're actually piloting. So what we're going to end up doing, we're piloting Metron, which is HydroCorp meter sales, and we're piloting. Metron is Metron, HydroCorp Camstrup. So you'll see Metron and you'll see HydroCorp for Camstrup, and then in addition to the stuff we already use. So the ones you see that are a little unusual are our larger scale pilots. So that gets us to a point where we can try them out for several months, see what we like better, and then kind of go one direction or the other.
So do we give them back if we don't like them?
On this, it's kind of interesting. I would say that's probably the way we would have went with a pilot like 10, 15 years ago. I'm not exactly sure on these yet, because the technology associated with both of these isn't super capital heavy. Like the Metrons are a cell network, and the software comes with them, and there's no infrastructure because it's using cell network. So to some degree, if we don't go that way, we're going to keep them in, because there's no real cost in keeping them in. If we go the Metron way, and the Camstrups are the ones we don't go with, there's only one tower. And so the bigger cost with that one is software. So then we evaluate, do we want to keep paying for that, or do we want to cycle through, get them out? But either way is going to work.
Any other questions on May and June water? Okay, if not, let's go on to the same months for the sewage department.
Similar question that starts with 57,845, but looking ahead to next month, I see there's a lot of sludge hauling. Is that related to that?
The dryer being
down?
Yep.
I haven't seen that in quite a while. And
yeah.
multiple vendors there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. Sludge hauling's a nearly daily thing right now, because our backup to get rid of that is the landfill. This is actually sludge hauling to fields, isn't it?
Nope, that is sludge hauling to.
Oh, waste
that's
management, sorry, yeah.
There will be another one on there for, BITEC, should be.
Yeah.
That will be a larger dollar value for, land applying to fields.
So we managed to find some ability to put on the fields, which just is better, right? There is nutrient value there. So there was a large effort there, but this portion is landfilling because dryer's down. And Chris will have a little
I'll touch on that
update on that. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for Mayor June on sewage? If not, let's go on to stormwater. Questions? All right, and then the final one is fiber.
I see payroll in there. Is that a part-time or is that a split, wages or how's that?
And anybody who ends up working on the fiber infrastructure has things on their timesheets that they can assign the time to. So when they end up doing anything construction maintenance related to them, they put their hours there.
All right, so then we need a motion to approve all claims.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Carried. Baker Tilly audit presentation. You're on.
Jody Dobson's with us today.
Where would you like me?
Wherever you want. Come on up or stand or do whatever works for you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me with you today. Yeah, we've got just a summary to walk through and then all the paper reports if there's any detailed questions.
Do you want to drive through the summary?
Sure.
Okay.
There you go.
So our audit process was very similar to prior years. We start by understanding your processes and transactions and any changes that may have occurred over the course of the year to help us to design the audit. Our focus is really on key risks, but also the various types of transactions, and we design our tests based on what types of evidence we might be able to maintain, the volume of transactions, the size of the balances, those kind of things. Ultimately looking to obtain enough evidence to issue our opinion. So the financial statements did receive what we call an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, and that's the highest level of assurance that we can give. Throughout the process, we work heavily with management to obtain all the information that we might need, and we're looking at all the key cycles, so general disbursements, payroll, billing and receipting, capital activity, because there's a lot of that goes on, and related borrowings and all of that. Excuse me. We note here that internal controls, while we aren't intending to give an opinion on internal controls, if certain things come to our attention, we're required to report those. And so the formal document that has kind of the bluish cover on it does talk a little bit about the internal controls, similar to prior years. The item that we report in here relates to the overall financial reporting process and segregation of duties, just due to the size of the organization that you can't have as many individuals involved in the processing of transactions, and that we help with the financial reports at year end. So nothing really surprising or different there, but just makes the reviews that you all do on a monthly basis that much more important. And then as far as other required communications, there was one new accounting standard effective for 2022 related to lease accounting. So we worked with management to evaluate any contracts that could potentially meet the definition of a lease as outlined in the accounting standards. And the key impact here really was water utility related to leases of space on the water towers that I believe are used by cellular antennas. I haven't found one yet that wasn't, but somebody's going to catch me on that. And so what that resulted in is a lease receivable and an unearned revenue being reported on the statement of net position, but no change in the timing of recognition at all of the revenues. So just kind of a little bit more footnote and transparency there of those long-term commitments. Other than that, no concerns over policies or estimates, difficulties or unusual transactions that didn't have guidance and required consultations or anything of that sort. So looking at the high-level results, here I have, we can see that the rate of return did improve over the prior year, along with the change in the authorized rate of return as a result of the rate case.
Admit up top.
Oh.
Somebody new came in. Thank you.
Yep. So with the new rates put in place, and we can see here in the graph that helped to increase the revenues and the margins for the current year, which really leads to a couple of the items that we see at the bottom here. So we have very strong cash reserves at year end. GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Association, would suggest a minimum of 3 months worth of operations on hand, and you've got just over 6 months. I will say the rating agencies look for more of the 6 to 9 month range, so this is really good. And then when we look at your debt coverage requirement related to revenue bonds, very strong and stable there, that you're not close to that debt coverage. Looking at the water utility, only about 15% of the capital assets are financed with outstanding debt. So that's relatively low, and when we look at both cash on hand and this debt position, that gives you a lot of flexibility as things may come up. So it's positive.
What would a normal number be in the for other utilities?
You know, there's so many factors that can impact that. We normally say if you've got a 50-50 split, that's kind of the blended general. Okay. If it gets more than 50% debt, then I start looking at, is there a reason? So, for example, a utility that just built a huge new treatment plant facility, I would expect to have a much higher debt on hand. I have worked with some utilities that have no debt, and then I always say, well, are we maintaining the assets? And if they've got, you know, a very routine system to maintain things, that's less concerning. If things are getting aged and sitting, then that might be a concern.
Okay.
So I think it's one of those numbers you have to look at with the larger picture. Sewer utility, we see very consistent margins over the last 3 years, with revenue exceeding expenses. And as far as cash on hand, a little over 2 months, so a bit lower than that benchmark, but we see here that it's kind of ebbed and flowed as capital projects come through over time. So not a concern there as long as that's being monitored. And again, strong meeting that debt coverage. So here we do see a little bit higher amount of debt, and that's really the result of the recent projects. So that's a big outlay, so not surprising. Looking at the stormwater utility, the last 3 years, the revenues have outpaced the expenses, although that gap closed a little bit in 2022 as expenses were increasing. But we can see that we've still got very strong cash on hand at year end. So it was not an immediate concern. The debt coverage was met, but it was getting a bit close there, and so I do think rates have already been adjusted to account for that increase in expenses and make sure that you don't have an issue with your debt coverage moving forward. And again, here only about 20% of the assets financed with outstanding debt, so not too bad. You know, do you want me to cover? I have information in here.
We'll do that in the next
Okay.
meeting. Yeah.
Joel?
Yep.
Back in 2018, 2019, was there something large in the utility that we or expenses exceeded revenue?
Yeah. So in the last, I mean, it's actually a couple of years prior to that even, the projects that we do coordinated with the city went up considerably. We started trying to hit that 1% a year benchmark, And not only that, but the projects, the very, very specific road segments we were doing involved very large infrastructure.
Okay.
Some of the biggest storm infrastructure in the city. So that kind of represents that. And then there was a borrowing for several years there to cover it while we adjusted. That crisscross is pretty well represented by that very large capital expenditure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think then the last one is the fiber. Fiber is still relatively new utility. To see this crisscrossing coming here early on is really positive. So as things have geared up and the rates have been monitored closely, we've got revenues outpacing expenses for 2022, building a good cash reserve.
Easy to get those months up there when the operating's so low, right?
That is fair.
We do have some,
relative.
we do have some projects on the horizon out of this enterprise too.
Okay.
That'll bring that more in parallel lines, I'd say.
Yeah. And at this point, there's no debt related to the fiber. Pass that back down.
Any questions for Jody?
As far as you're concerned, everything's in order.
Yeah, I think things are all on track, and, you know, management's really on top of things.
Good.
It's monitoring things, so.
So a motion to approve the audit is in order.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
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 Pose same sign. Carried. Okay, on to the inspection tech position.
So there's a memo in there. When it comes to a lot of this stuff, we do take this to both the commission and the personnel committee. Essentially what's going on here, and it kind of referenced it a little while ago, but this memo reads a lot like one from a few years back. But I guess the cliff notes is that we went from a 1 inspector position to a 2 inspector position, which, you know, in some ways could double your capacity. But from the years mentioned here, we've actually increased our need by somewhere between 8 and 12-fold. So we're trying to account for that growth. In addition, as you'll see on here, we do something like 400 site inspections every year for stormwater. So there's been a huge growth in the inspection and construction management side of the department in the last, what's becoming many years now. We're just coming at it from a pretty slow perspective. So it's actually this same evening tonight, engineering will be bringing a very similar request forward to add to their inspection department, recognizing the same need is there. And we've got too much going on for the staff we have to handle it. So that's the request. Yeah.
Is this a new position?
It'll be
Existing.
it'll be a new position of a type that we already have. So kind of our back office here, we have a GIS tech and 2 inspection techs. So this would be going to 3 inspection techs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you expect that the volume of infrastructure reconstruction is gonna continue at the same pace for as long as we can look forward?
Yeah, and it kind of has to, right? Because we're trying to get to that 1% a year, and those projects are so big that the contractors actually can't even finish them in a year. So we're keep pushing that bubble, and we need to do that if we're going to pretend that our infrastructure is going to last for 100 years. And so when we go back let's just say 2017 or so, we're doing far less, half a mile, quarter mile a year, and we know our stuff isn't going to last 400 years, right? And that's what you're kind of getting at that point. So yeah, we need to maintain this pace of reconstruction, and it's getting to be that there's new stuff every year, right? So we have big reconstructs, and then we have total reconstructs. We have big street reconstructions that we engage into. We have the stormwater site things we do. We do cross connection control surveys. We do the private well program. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And then, of course, we do plan review, we do as-built, we do the asset management, we do all that. So all things considered, for the 4 sets of infrastructure that we oversee as a department, it's a pretty, even with an extra one, it's a pretty lean group.
Now, you say you do plan review. Who's doing the engineering? Is that DPW or?
It's so on our big reconstructs, we hire out engineering currently, and engineering and utilities pay their respective shares.
Yeah.
Now we do fund half of the city engineer position, which currently isn't filled. And the hope there is that when that gets there through a couple of years of time, we'd bring that design back in-house. So that'd be less contracted design. On the smaller stuff, like when we need 3 blocks of design done to do new storm sewer, engineering will do that for us. And on really small stuff, we do it on the fly in the field. Mm-hmm.
When you contract for engineering, do the engineering firms provide any inspection service?
No, we don't contract for it. We've found that the relationship between us and engineers over the years needs our review, like very, very thorough review, and the inspectors are the ones that really lead that effort, because they're going to be the ones staring at those plans later on in the year, watching the contractor install the stuff that our engineers designed for us. So there's this balance between, we know what we want, we know how we want it done, so go design this, and then when they give it back to us, we're like, nope, do it this way, and then they give it back to us, and we're like, nope, do it this way. So it is kind of a cooperative thing. It's just that the level of effort involved in, over a mile of centerline design is pretty huge. So it's good that they're there kind of doing the heavy lifting on it. And then you get fresh eyes on it to say, okay, here you missed this, or we want this done this way, because that's how we do it, that kind of thing. So it's been worked out over the last, 5-6 years in a way that I think is working really well.
But we don't have an engineer in place right now.
We don't have a city engineer in place right now. We've gone back and forth. That's another one of these where it's hard to keep somebody in that role, like a lot of city positions. Yeah.
In this role as an inspector, do they have the ability to reject something in installation as it's going, or stop a project? And
yep. Yeah, there's a lot of that. So even from that perspective, they're working on our behalf out there, right? So if they see something that isn't okay, they'll shut them down. But on the other hand, they also have specs, like the sewers get mandrilled, right? So you pull this device through that will not pull through if something's deflected or deformed or something. So there's the more spec-driven part of it, and then there's also the authority of the department side of it to say, no, that's not okay, redo it, type thing. Yeah.
I know it always drove me to the nth degree with the state philosophy being that a contractor is responsible for their own quality control. Right. Yeah. And as such, by having an inspector there, well, you accepted it. Yeah. Yeah. And that schism was. Yeah. No, we don't. You get to the situation where you think of the roof project out there at well 11. Mm-hmm. Well, you inspected it. Yeah, right. It's yours. And, yep. And yeah, thankfully we don't operate like that here. It's definitely with oversight and approval on the fly. And that's actually why we need more, because now that we are responsible for basically all the buried infrastructure in a right-of-way, you can't jump around on jobs very well, because they're always doing something underground until they're ready to pave. So one guy gets really committed to a job.
So Joel, this is Anna.
Good question. Hi.
Yeah, I have one. In terms of payroll, would this new person be kind of split between a lot of these, or how does that work?
Yep. There's a lot of staff in the department, especially this position, that bills hours appropriately to the enterprise that they are working on.
So if they're on a project and they are inspecting the water, they'll bill it there, and then if it's sewer, they bill it there, and if it's stormwater, they bill it there.
Yep.
Okay.
On a section of road, they're inspecting all three as they go in, right?
Yeah, so in a typical project, you'll see at least 3 passes for the utilities. They'll do the deepest one first, which is often sanitary, come back to the water, come back to the storm, come back and do laterals. So it's, you know, when they're working on something, a lot of times it is pretty focused on one of them. But even so, I mean, it's pretty easy to spread your hours out over the right utilities.
Okay.
Well, if you're good with the new position, the motion to approve is in order.
I'd move to approve.
Second. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
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 Both same sign. Motion carried. Water supply.
So Eric's off this week, doing himself up north, I hope. And the normal reports are in here for your review, and I'll field any questions that you have. It's been dry and warm.
Sure have.
Yeah, I see we've used a lot more water in June
Yeah.
than normal.
Yep, it's up there. Well, okay, so this one actually I should explain. Do we have the overall pumpage, or is that just well 11? Oh, there it is, okay. So this one's a little more relevant. This is up too in June. On well 11, we did increase our pumping. It's actually still within the guidelines of the well 11 agreement with Town Hall, but we increased it just because of how much extra pumping is going on, so that as the other wells cycle on, they don't have as much to recover on. So that's the well 11 increase that you see right there, because this is a very static pumping level, but the overall system, you can see we're still up considerably.
Okay, any other questions on water supply? If not, let's go on to street. Chris?
All right, try to make this quick as I can here anyway. May and June, the wastewater plant met all of our permit requirements. Everything went pretty well. We did have a DNR inspection. We get them every 2 to 4 years, depending on how busy the DNR is. So we did have an on-site inspection audit. Everything went well, as far as I'm aware. I have not seen the report yet. When I get the written report, I imagine within a week to 2 weeks from now, I'll write a response and send it back to them if needed. Any of those correspondence, the report and any correspondence back, I will include on next month's commission meeting packet. So you guys have that to look forward to, if that's something to look forward to. The other thing I've got is a update on our dryer. It is still obviously down. We talked about the sludge hauling and things like that. Parts are to ship around August 25th. They come in through customs, so the way I've been told is that could take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks to get through customs. So depending on how the customs guys feel when they show up, depends on when we get our parts. But work on the dryer should start the week of August 28th. They should start taking things apart and getting ready for the parts to show up.
Chris, did they have to manufacture the parts?
2 of the parts had to be manufactured.
Okay.
Those are the 2 that have the long lead times.
Okay.
So that's what we're gonna be waiting on when they show up. Some specialized machined parts, that bearing caps, things like that, that aren't mass produced.
Mm-hmm.
So made individually for each unit.
What do the DNR inspectors look for every 2 to 4 years?
They go through the entire facility, all of our paperwork, make sure all of our dates on our lab work. So when you look at like our data that we were looking at a second ago, if you want to go up a page or 2. A couple more. So there, you'll see the dates on the left, and then all of our data going for each of those dates, making sure that those correspond with each other, making sure that they're in the correct days. Then they go through and they look at each individual portion of the treatment facility, look at all the equipment, make sure we're maintaining it well, all of our maintenance records, all of our safety stuff, maintenance, all of that. They go through everything basically and make sure that we're doing everything we need to do.
So how long does a typical inspection like that take? A week?
Half a day to a day, depending on how much stuff they need to go through. A lot of the stuff we send to them ahead of time.
Okay.
So they do have the ability to go through a lot of the paperwork ahead of time. They also, depending on your size and what you do, they determine how in-depth they need to go. Obviously, if they're going through and they're finding nothing on the really easy stuff to screw up, they're not gonna dive really down into the stuff that's pretty easy to do on a day-to-day basis. If you were a facility that maybe had a lot of violations, didn't do the easy stuff real well, then they're gonna dig in a little bit more and try to catch a little more of that low-hanging fruit to try to improve that facility, try to bring them up to a satisfactory level.
Okay.
But for us, it was, I think Nick was here probably 3.5 hours, 3.5 to 4 hours, somewhere in there.
And this isn't the first time he's done ours either, right?
No,
So
this
that
is
helps.
the third time he's done
So
ours.
it's familiar with.
Yeah. And I'm in regular contact with him every time we have anything go wrong.
Okay.
He's my contact, so
Okay.
he knows what.
Curious on the, with the dryer being down, does that affect some of the, discharges here? I know at one time we were talking about, recovering of phosphorus and
As of right now, no.
the waste stream.
It actually, if anything, it helps us because we're more consistent. We run Monday through Friday, run our dewatering, our biosolids dewatering. So we've got our anaerobically digested sludge. We're dewatering that, so we're taking the water out of it and then taking that water and sending it back to the head of the plant. So we do that now instead of being on for when we're running the dryer, we do that for 21 to 28 straight days. And then we'd be off for 2 weeks while it refills and then we start back up again. Well, now we've been operating where it is Monday through Friday and then we'll run the belt press either Saturday or Sunday. So now we've only got 1 day that we're not sending that side stream back to the facility, that dirty water coming off of the solids that we're removing from the solids and not sending to the landfill. That all goes back to the head of the facility and gets retreated again. So if we're really consistent, everything works a lot better. So when we aren't consistent, when we do that 3 to 4 week run and then shut off for 2 weeks, then restart up, that's when it's a little harder on the facility. So with the way we're operating now, it's actually a lot better for our numbers and will actually help us out. But ultimately, neither of them are detrimental.
Very expensive.
But it's very expensive and something we don't want to continue to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got for my operations report.
You might as well go on to the compliance maintenance report.
Okay, this is our compliance maintenance annual report, the CMAR for 2022. If you perused it and looked through it, you'll see down at the very bottom of it, the last page, we did get a 4.0 grade on it. Is that the last page? There should be another page, yes. Maybe a couple more.
All A's on the last page.
Yep.
Yep.
So basically what we need is an approval by the commission saying, yes, you saw it. If this becomes important, if there were any actions that needed to be taken, that it's being approved by a governing body to make sure that the things that are getting done need to get done. So here, you can look, and so we don't have any deficiencies, we don't have anything going on that needs attention. If you go to the next page, I think it's comments. So there you'll see at the top of there, we need action taken. So that'll be the action that I'm gonna ask for here. And then basically, if there are any actions that we needed to do, if we had a bunch of violations, if we had a bunch of things going on where, hey, we're not meeting our permit, however that would work, then it would be written in one of these boxes on that comments page, and that would make sure that the governing body sees it. We don't have any of those, we don't have any deficiencies, we don't have anything we need to address. So therefore, all we need out of the commission is an approval to accept it as is, and the ability to submit this document to them.
This happens once a year, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah. Motion is in order.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
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 All same sign. Motion carried. I think we can combine 9 and 10 and, take a motion to, the expenditures for both the grist washer and the check valve. There's two memos at the end of your packet from Chris. Chris, you wanna go ahead?
I think everybody's heard me talk enough, but, so basically we have a grit washer, so our grit is any inorganic material that comes into the wastewater plant. If we don't remove the grit goes into our pumps and wear the pumps, basically like sandblasting metal. You'll take all those, basically like a wet sandpaper that just wears out all your equipment. So we have a grit remover, or a grit removal system. It removes the grit from the system, but that grit still has a lot of organics in it, things like that. So we need to wash that grit before we end up dumping it in the dumpster, just to control some odor and some environmental issues. So that grit washer has a gearbox on top of it, and it's got a big mixer in it that stirs it around to make sure we can clean the grit effectively. That gearbox failed. It's from, what year was it? I think I got it on here. From
4 was it? Oh, 03?
From '03. So we're right at 20 years right now. That part was already ordered. It is on site. Energenics, the company that reps Huber, will be here within the next week to week and a half to replace that and install it. So this is kind of a going into the past to say, hey, we need to get this approved because there's over $5,000. But without a June meeting, we had to get it ordered as soon as we could. So we did go ahead and order that. So we'd be looking for approval on that one. And then the other one is a pair of check valves that were original in 1994 that are no longer supported. To replace those, we're talking about $3,000 a piece. Basically what that does is once a pump pumps it up, check valve closes to make sure the water doesn't flow back in to the place we just pumped it out of. And currently one of those is not doing that. So we're looking at replacing both of them.
So operationally significant, kind of the benchmark by where we wait or don't wait, and these were both significant, so we went forward, but we're just looking for kind of retroactive approval. Expenditures because of the price, and I believe they're both eligible for replacement funds.
Yes, they're both absolutely replacement fund dollars.
So
I would like to move for approval of these items.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carried. Okay, I guess we have a new reporter.
Hey, Paul, I've got a question for you. Is that okay?
Chris.
Eric's on vacation. You can call him, but
I'm sorry.
maybe.
Yeah,
Is a question okay?
sure.
Okay. Does grit include plastic?
It's anything heavier than water. Anything that doesn't float, anything inorganic that doesn't float.
Okay.
So you're talking pieces of metal, you're talking, the main things we see are sand and gravel, any jewelry, things that'll fit through our bar screen, anything smaller than 3 millimeter, that's small, that's heavy, will settle out. Pieces of steel wool, we find quite a bit of that. Hair ties amazingly end up in there. But there's a lot of those kind of inorganics that we end up removing out of there.
I was just wondering what size of the...
Well, the screen, it comes through a 3 millimeter bar screen when it comes into the wastewater plant. That takes out any large inorganics. That goes through a wash press as well, just like we're talking about here, but a separate one. All that wash water goes back into the head of the plant and gets treated, and then all the garbage goes into a dumpster to the landfill.
Okay.
The grit gets removed then, which is anything smaller than 3 millimeter.
Right.
That makes it through, that's heavier than water. We basically stir it at 1 meter per second. Anything that's heavier than organics will settle out. Any organics will stay in suspension at 1 meter per second. And that grit, then that heavier material is pumped off, washed, and then whatever's left, whatever's in that wash water goes back to the head of the plant and goes back through.
Okay. I just have been reading about tiny pieces of plastic that are wondered if we were taking those out, or if it doesn't sound like it.
Probably not. Okay.
All right, now on to the construction and maintenance report. Shane?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce you to Shane. Shane's been appointed in the interim role of construction and maintenance superintendent, and he's gonna give a little verbal update.
Yeah, sure. So basically, the last couple of months, the construction crews have been working on a few projects, including the road project on Ridge Road. They've been adjusting manholes and relocating fire hydrants. Also installed and extended some conduit for future fiber on Ridge Road. They've also been working on replacing lead services on Spruce Street, which included installing a new 2-inch water main. They've helped in moving some fiber optic lines for the Willett Arena project. It needed to be relocated for the addition going on. And currently they are repairing manholes and catch basins on Business Park Drive in preparation for the resurfacing project. The collections crew, they continue their televising and inspecting the new sanitary and storm mains that were installed on Washington Avenue and 3rd Street. That was part of the leftover project from last year being completed this year. And they're cleaning and televising sanitary and storm lines for next year's 2024 projects. So basically, that's what the construction crews have been up to these last couple months.
You said they're cleaning and sanitizing the lines?
Televising.
Cleaning and televising.
Sorry.
The sanitary lines.
There's not enough life
on a good day.
I might have.
A little bleach.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Shane. Joel, you're on with director's report.
Well, with a lot of regulatory stuff here and reporting stuff going on, I just want to say the effort put into the audit stuff by Mary and her staff is very much appreciated. Thank you, Mary. And the CMAR that's always involved too, so thank you, Chris. With that, I'll also point out that the CCR, our annual CCR report, is out and available. Did we put a copy in? I don't think we did. It's at stevenspoint.com/CCR. It's very much like past years, just has new lab results in it and kind of gives an update on what's going on. So that's an annual report as well. If anybody's looking for it, it's out there, or we have hard copies up front. We're working with the university on the Burlesky property. That would be, if you go north of Fleet Farm on Burlesky, the first curve it takes to the right there, the property to the northwest is utility property. We're working with them on kind of a forestry plan. There's some logging needed out there, but also a recreation plan because it's such a nice piece of property. So they've suggested some things, and we're going to keep working with them on that. Involves 3 different classes actually with the College of Natural Resources. So just wanted to let you know that's going on. That's all I got.
Is that part of the property that was originally Camp Fletcher?
Fletcher property is north and west of there yet.
Okay.
This stuff was all purchased, I believe, in the 60s. Purchased is probably a kinder word than I should be using for wellhead protection purposes.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this was outright purchased or if it was taken. I wasn't
Okay.
sure, but yeah, it's east of our well field.
Oh, is that within the city of Stevens Point, or is that?
Let me look.
No,
Actually, much of that is town of Hull.
Oh.
The way it looks, and I'm not sure which line. I think, yeah, it would all be, so when you get north and west of like Kingfisher, Sandpiper, that's Hull. When you get into the Fletcher stuff and north, it looks like it's inside of the city of Stevens Point boundary, but some of our land is in the town of Hull. Yep.
On the CCR report, is there, I did not look at it. Just wondering if there was any, statement made as far as PFAS?
Yeah, yep. I'll show you what everybody sees here really quick. So this is what it looks like every year. We've kept the same graphics for a long time. The PFAS is down here. Where are you? So right here, and it gives a little explanation of where it comes from and everything like that, and it gives, we had two things that are in the level of detection, but you'll see how insignificant they are compared to any health advisory limit or anything like that. So 1.2 and 0.97 for both of these, the PFBS and the PFOA, are both barely detectable, I guess I'd say. From, we're getting into parts per trillion on different things. So
That's good.
yeah, that's good.
Okay, otherwise a motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll move to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
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 Both same sign. Motion carried.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.